right? So authenticity means that Bob knows that the message came from me, but there's no way for me to ever deny that I wrote the message. So for instance, if I write this email, "Hey Bob, today I was thinking that Eve is a real jerk." If at any point in the future this email is compromised, there is no way for me to deny that I wrote it. It has my digital signature on it. It's undeniable. Undeniable. And so what these people are proposing instead is this OTR model, where instead of actually encrypting data with your public key pair, instead you only use those keys to sign ephemeral key exchanges, right? So I do an ephemeral key exchange with Bob. Each part of that ephemeral key exchange is signed with our public key pair, and so then you use this ephemeral session key to communicate. And they sort of take it up a notch as well by saying that you're using this session key, but every message that you exchange also includes 1/2 of a key exchange. So every time I send something, it includes 1/2 of a key exchange. I get a response, it includes the other half of the key exchange. And so now the key that you're using continues to roll forward with each message that you exchange, so that there's never even one key that is used to encrypt all of your correspondence, that it's constantly moving forward, and so there's no one key to ever recover. The other thing that they did was, so you have a message, and in the OTR model, you encrypt it with some session key. And then you authenticate it using a message authentication code. And the key for that is derived from the session key. So immediately, this gives you some semblance of deniability, because in the past, you used digital signatures. They're undeniable because there's only one possible author. In the case of message authentication codes, there are two possible authors, because two people know the session key. Thus, two people know the key for the message authentication code, which means that if Bob receives a message, Bob knows that if the MAC passes, that it was either constructed by me or him. And since Bob knows that he didn't send the message, he knows it came from me. But if at any point Bob holds up the message and says, "Moxie sent this to me," I can say, no, Bob made that message. And there's no way to prove that it came from me or Bob. What's more, since the session keys are constantly rolling forward, that means the MAC keys are constantly rolling forward as well. And that means that as the MAC keys become obsolete, you can just broadcast them in the clear. And once you broadcast it in the clear, anyone can forge previous messages, which means that you have an even greater sense of deniability, where you could say, not only did Bob write this, but anyone could have written this. Any eavesdropper could have written this message. So with the OTR model, a previous key compromise does not affect all your previous correspondence, and you get authenticity, but you also get deniability. And I think that this is something that's going to become more and more important in the future, that as we design and roll out more and more secure protocols, this is going to be very important features of those protocols, because we are dealing with this change from key escrow to key disclosure. So in that light, another project that I've started working on is this project called Whisper Systems. And what we're trying to do is bring forward secure protocols into mobile phones. And so this is combining both of these areas that I'm interested in for future trends, right? Mobile phones, this sort of false choice that we're presented with, as well as forward secure protocols, something that's going to become more and more important as key disclosure becomes more and more of an issue. And so the first app that we're working on is this secure voice app. And what we've, there are plenty of secure voice apps for cell phones that have been deployed before. What we're trying to do is make something that is extremely easy to use, something that runs on smartphones, something that you don't need special hardware for, something that is free, something that is, requires no setup. You just install the app and you're done. And so what we've done is write this for Android. And right now, it looks exactly like the normal dialer. It integrates into the existing contact system. It is just as easy or easier to make a secure call as it would be to make a normal call. The way it works is by using voice over IP. And so there's this problem, right, where like voice over IP tends to not work very well. And particularly in the mobile environment, it tends to be really bad. And our observation is that most of the problems, the flakiness that people experience with mobile VoIP comes down to the signaling layer. That if you have a normal VoIP setup, you have your clients who have to maintain a connection to some kind of switch like Asterisk. And they have to maintain that connection at all times that they want to send or receive calls. And the problem is that in the mobile environment in particular, you have network connectivity issues. You tend to go in and out of network connectivity. These connections can break, and you might not even really know it, or one party might know it, but not the other party. And what's more, it requires that your phone be on all the time. You can't, like, your phone can never go to sleep because you have to maintain this TCP connection to some server. And so what we've done is realize that in the mobile environment, there's actually an existing signaling infrastructure that we can avail ourselves of instead of falling back on this traditional thing. And it's called the telecom network. That they have done a very good job of setting up this signaling infrastructure that people use to exchange information on their phones. And so what we're trying to do is just leverage that for the signaling aspect of our VoIP app. And so as a first cut of this, what we do is signaling via SMS. And it all happens behind the scenes. It's not like you get a thing in your inbox or whatever. Yeah. But that, signaling via SMS allows you to take out the central server altogether. No one has to run an asterisk box anyway. All the addressing is done by your normal phone number. Your phone can go to sleep, and everything should work quite well. So you don't have to maintain this constant connection. You don't need the equivalent of a Skype ID, a Fring ID, or something. You have your phone number, and that's it. And you don't need to run a VoIP server. You just install the app, and now you're ready to make and receive calls to anyone whose phone number you already know. Then, to provide the security aspect of this, the RTP channel is actually a ZRTP channel. And ZRTP is a protocol that was developed by Philip Zimmerman. It's actually a very nice protocol. The way it works is that it does once again, ephemeral session key. It negotiates an ephemeral session key, and then that is used to communicate between the two devices, and then a short authentication string is a short authentication string is derived from that session key. So the way it works is that once a call is set up, at the bottom of your call screen, there will be two words. In this case, Flatfoot Eskimo. And those two words are derived from the session key that both parties have. So what you do is you make the call, and the first thing you do is you look at the string, and then you say, Flatfoot Eskimo. And the person you're talking to says, yep, Flatfoot Eskimo. And now you know that you both have the same string at the bottom of your phones, which means that there was no man-in-the-middle attack. Which means that the entire authenticity problem of distributing keys, setting up some crazy PKI, web of trust, all of that stuff, you don't have to deal with any of that. All you do is read this string to each other when you first set up the call. These strings are actually sometimes really prophetic too. Especially late at night, you'll be like, yeah, Flatfoot Eskimo. That's what I'm feeling, man. So the other project that we're working on is an encrypted SMS app that is derived from the OTR protocol, where once again, the app looks identical to the existing SMS client for Android. The only difference is that if you happen to be exchanging messages with someone who also supports this client, it will negotiate these ephemeral session keys using the OTR model. And every time you exchange an SMS, once again, the key will roll forward. So there's never one key that you can compromise to obtain all previous messages. So it looks like I'm about out of time, but these projects are sort of my small hope for reducing the scope of the choice that we're beginning to be faced with more and more. And you can find more information on my website, .crime.org. Thank you. Questions? The question is, aren't you putting yourself at risk with Google sharing because someone else's activity could be traced to you and maybe they're doing something really bad? And the answer is, I don't think so, because for instance, your cookies never leave your web browser. So your Google cookie never leaves the web browser. It is stripped off before it's submitted. The cookies that are being passed around are cookies that were issued freshly from Google and have no relationship to you. There's no way that these cookies or these requests can ever be associated back to you as it is. So, another question. The question is the Whisper Systems Android app available now? And it should be available, both apps should be available as a public beta in about a week. Right. so the question is, if you're doing OTR over SMS,